my granddaughter said. I didn't even know I had a grandma. At their house, I found out I had been removed from the photo album. Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached. I never thought a simple visit to my son's house would shatter everything I believed about my place in this family. At 75, I'd learned to expect disappointment, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened that Tuesday afternoon in November. It had been 8 months since I'd last seen Michael. 8 months of unanswered phone calls, ignored text messages, and excuses about being too busy. Sarah, his wife, always had a reason why it wasn't a good time to visit. Work was hectic, Emma had soccer practice, they were renovating the kitchen. The list went on. But that day, something felt different when Michael called. His voice was softer, almost guilty. Mom, why don't you come over for dinner Sunday? Sarah's making pot roast. I should have been suspicious of the sudden invitation, but I was desperate. Desperate to see my 8-year-old granddaughter Emma. Desperate to feel like I still belonged somewhere in this world. The drive to their suburban home in Millfield took 45 minutes. I'd made this trip countless times when Emma was younger, back when I was still welcome. The house looked exactly the same: white picket fence, manicured lawn, Sarah's prized rose bushes lining the walkway. Everything perfect as always. Sarah answered the door with that smile. You know, the one, perfectly practiced, never reaching the eyes. Kathy. So good to see you. She air-kissed my cheek, her perfume overwhelming and artificial. Michael appeared behind her, looking uncomfortable. He'd gained weight, I noticed. Stress, probably. Hey, Mom, he said, giving me a brief hug that felt more like an obligation than affection. Emma was in the living room, sprawled on the carpet with her coloring books. She looked up when I entered, and my heart nearly burst with love and longing. She'd grown so much, her blonde hair longer now, her face more angular, losing those round baby cheeks I remembered kissing goodnight. Hi, sweetie, I said, kneeling down beside her. What are you coloring? She looked at me with those bright blue eyes, Michael's eyes, and tilted her head with genuine curiosity. Are you Daddy's friend? The question hit me like a physical blow. I glanced at Michael, then at Sarah, searching their faces for some explanation. Emma, honey, I'm your grandmother. You're Daddy's mommy. Emma's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. She looked from me to her parents, then back to me. But I don't have a grandma on Daddy's side. Mommy told me Daddy's mommy went away before I was born. The room went silent. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. A clock I'd given them as a wedding gift 15 years ago. My hands started trembling, and I had to steady myself against the coffee table. Emma, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I'm your grandma Kathy. I've always been here. She shook her head with the certainty only children possess. No, you're not. I don't have a grandma Kathy. I only have Grandma Helen. That was Sarah's mother. Mommy showed me all the pictures, and you're not in any of them. My vision blurred. 25 years I'd been Michael's mother. 8 years I'd loved this little girl from the moment she drew her first breath. And she had no idea who I was. I looked at Michael, pleading silently for him to correct this horrible mistake. His face was pale, his jaw clenched tight. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, looking helplessly at his wife. Sarah stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. Emma, why don't you go wash up for dinner? As Emma skipped away, chattering about her coloring project, I remained frozen on the floor. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me like a physical force. My own granddaughter didn't know I existed. How? The word came out as barely more than a breath. Sarah and Michael exchanged a look. In that look, I saw years of decisions made without me, conversations held behind my back, a systematic erasure of my existence from their lives. Mom, Michael started, but his voice cracked. I stood up slowly, my 75-year-old knees protesting. How does my granddaughter not know who I am? The question hung in the air like smoke, choking us all. Sarah's perfect composure never wavered, But I caught something in her eyes. Not guilt, not remorse, something colder. Satisfaction. Dinner was a charade. We sat around their dining table. The same table where I'd shared countless holiday meals, where I'd helped Emma blow out candles on her first birthday cake, where I'd once felt like family. Now I felt like an intruder in my own son's home. Emma chattered about school, completely oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. She told me about her teacher, Mrs. Peterson, and how she'd lost her first tooth last month. Every innocent word was a knife twist, reminding me of all the moments I'd missed, all the milestones I hadn't been there to celebrate. "The tooth fairy gave me $5 whole," Emma said proudly, showing me the gap in her smile. "That's wonderful, sweetie," I managed, though my throat felt like sandpaper. After dinner, Sarah announced it was Emma's bedtime. "Say goodnight to Daddy's friend, Emma." Friend. Not grandmother. Not family. Friend. Emma hugged me politely, the way she'd hug any stranger her parents introduced her to. "It was nice meeting you," she said with perfect manners, and my heart shattered all over again. Once Emma was upstairs, the three of us returned to the living room. The silence was suffocating. Michael poured himself a whiskey, something he never used to do. Sarah busied herself clearing imaginary dust from surfaces that were already spotless. "I think we need to talk," I said finally. Sarah looked at Michael, and again I saw that silent communication between them. Years of marriage had given them their own language, one that excluded me entirely. "Mom," Michael began, still not meeting my eyes. "You have to understand, it's been difficult." Difficult? I kept my voice level, though inside I was screaming. What's been difficult is not seeing my granddaughter for 8 months. What's been difficult is having my calls ignored and my visits cancelled. "That's not entirely true," Sarah interjected smoothly. "You've been... well, you haven't exactly made an effort." I stared at her in disbelief. "I've called every week. I've sent birthday cards, Christmas gifts. I've begged to see Emma." "Have you?" Sarah's voice was sweet as honey, but there was poison underneath. "Because that's not how I remember it." Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I turned to him, desperate for support, for recognition of the truth we both knew. "Michael, tell her. Tell her about the phone calls, the messages I've left." He took a long sip of his whiskey, his silence more damning than any words could be. "The truth is, Kathy," Sarah continued, her tone becoming more confident, "you've been absent from Emma's life by choice. You've always been too busy, too focused on your own problems to really be present for her." "That's not true." My voice cracked. "I love Emma more than anything." "Love isn't enough," Sarah said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "Children need consistency. They need reliability. They need people who show up." "I tried to show up. You wouldn't let me." "That's not how Emma sees it," Sarah replied calmly. "All she knows is that you weren't there for her dance recitals, her school plays, her birthday parties. She stopped asking about you years ago." The words hit me like physical blows. Each accusation felt rehearsed, polished from repetition. How many times had Sarah practiced this speech? How long had she been preparing for this moment? "Michael," I pleaded, turning to my son. "You know this isn't true. You know I've tried." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes broke my heart. Not anger, not hatred, but something worse, indifference. "Mom, you have to admit you've been difficult to deal with." Difficult. The word came out as a whisper. "You're always so negative, always complaining about something." Sarah and I just wanted to protect Emma from that kind of energy. I felt the room spinning around me. This was my son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father walked out. The child I'd worked 3 jobs to support, whose every scraped knee I'd kissed, whose every nightmare I'd chased away. "So you decided to erase me," I said, the pieces finally falling into place. "You decided it would be easier to pretend I didn't exist." Sarah's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw the truth in her eyes. This hadn't been a gradual drift or a series of misunderstandings. This had been deliberate, calculated, systematic. "We did what we thought was best for our family," she said. "Family. Not my family. Not Emma's family." I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. "Emma is my granddaughter. Emma is our daughter," Sarah corrected. "And we decide what's best for her." Michael said nothing. His silence was the loudest sound in the room. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's confused face asking if I was her daddy's friend. By 3 a.m, I gave up trying and made myself a cup of tea with shaking hands. The next few days passed in a blur of disbelief and growing determination. I needed to understand how this had happened, how my own family had managed to erase me so completely from Emma's life. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my neighbor Dorothy, who lived 2 streets over from Michael and Sarah. "Oh, Kathy." Dorothy's voice was warm with surprise. "I haven't heard from you in ages. How are you holding up?" "Holding up?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" There was a pause. "Well, with everything that's happened. Sarah mentioned you've been having some health issues, that you needed space to focus on yourself." My grip tightened on the phone. "Sarah said that. She's such a sweet girl, always so concerned about you. She told me at the grocery store last month that you decided to step back from family obligations for a while. Said it was doctor's orders." Doctor's orders. I'd never been healthier in my life despite my age. "Dorothy, have you seen me at any of Emma's events lately? School plays, birthday parties?" Another pause, longer this time. "Well, no, but Sarah always explains that you're not feeling up to it. She shows everyone the beautiful cards you send though." Cards I'd never sent. "What cards?" "The lovely ones for Emma's birthday, for Christmas. Sarah always reads them out loud. They're so thoughtful, all about how you're thinking of Emma but need to focus on your recovery." Felt sick. "Have you ever seen these cards?" "Well, no, Sarah keeps them private, family business, But she tells us what they say." After I hung up, I sat staring at the phone for a long time. Sarah had been crafting a narrative about me for years, painting me as the grandmother who chose distance over involvement. She'd been managing my reputation in the community, making sure everyone understood that my absence was my choice, not theirs. 2 days later, I drove to Michael's house when I knew he'd be at work and Sarah would be running errands. I still had the spare key from years ago when I used to help with Emma after school. I told myself I wasn't breaking in. I was visiting my son's home, a place where I'd once been welcome. The house felt different in the daylight, emptier somehow. I walked through the rooms I'd helped decorate, past furniture I'd helped them pick out. Everything looked the same, but something was missing. Me. I found what I was looking for in the living room. The photo albums Sarah kept on the bookshelf, the ones she'd always been so proud of. "Emma's whole life is documented," she used to say. "She'll treasure these someday." I pulled down the first album with trembling fingers. Emma's baby pictures, her first steps, her first Christmas. Page after page of memories I'd lived through, moments I'd been present for. But in every single photo I was gone. There was Emma's first birthday party. I remembered being there, remembered holding her as she smashed cake into her hair. In the album, the photo showed Michael and Sarah beaming at their daughter, with a suspicious gap where someone had been carefully cropped out. Emma's second Christmas. I'd bought her that little rocking horse she was sitting on in the picture, but the photo showed only Michael helping her rock, with another telltale space where I'd been edited out. Page after page of surgical removals. I'd been erased so skillfully that unless you knew to look for the empty spaces, you'd never know someone was missing. But I wasn't just cropped out, I was replaced. In several photos, Sarah's mother Helen appeared in spaces where I knew I'd been standing. Helen, who lived in Florida and visited maybe twice a year, was suddenly present at every major milestone. I found Helen in photos from Emma's first day of school, an event I'd attended, not her. Helen at Emma's dance recital, Helen at the zoo, Helen reading bedtime stories. A complete replacement grandmother, inserted into my granddaughter's history. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the pages. Years of my life with Emma, systematically destroyed and rewritten. Every hug, every story, every moment of love I'd shared with her had been given to someone else. I heard a car door slam outside and quickly put the albums back. Through the window, I saw Sarah's silver SUV in the driveway. I should have left immediately, but something kept me frozen in place. Sarah walked in carrying grocery bags, stopping short when she saw me standing in her living room. "Kathy." Her voice was perfectly controlled, not surprised exactly, but not welcoming either. "What are you doing here?" "Looking at pictures of my granddaughter," I said quietly. "Those are Emma's family photos," she corrected, setting down the bags. "I don't think you should be looking through our personal belongings without permission." "Our personal belongings." I held up one of the albums. "I was at Emma's second birthday party. I bought her that dress she's wearing in this picture. But somehow, I'm not in any of these photos." Sarah's expression didn't change. "Memory can be unreliable at your age, Kathy." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. "You removed me from these pictures." I organized Emma's photo albums to reflect the people who've been consistently present in her life. I was present. I was there for all of these moments. Sarah moved closer, her voice dropping to that dangerous sweetness I was beginning to recognize. "Were you really, though? Or were you just there?" "I think you should leave," Sarah said, her voice carrying that quiet authority she'd perfected over the years. But I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. Something in her tone, the way she'd said, "Were you really there?" made me realize this went deeper than edited photographs. "Sarah, I need to understand something. The birthday cards Dorothy mentioned. The ones you said I sent but never actually received." A flicker of something crossed her face. Annoyance, maybe, that her careful system had been discovered. "I don't know what you're talking about. You've been intercepting my mail, haven't you?" She turned away, busying herself with unpacking groceries that didn't need immediate attention. "That's ridiculous. Is it? How else would you know what to tell people I wrote in cards I never sent?" Sarah's movements became more aggressive, slamming a box of cereal onto the counter. "You're being paranoid, Kathy. This is exactly the kind of behavior that made us concerned about your influence on Emma." "What behavior?" "Asking questions. Wanting to see my granddaughter. Showing up uninvited, going through our personal belongings, making wild accusations." Sarah faced me again, and her mask had shifted slightly. The sweet facade was cracking, revealing something harder underneath. "This is why we made the decision we did." "We?" I stepped closer. "Or you?" She didn't answer, but her silence told me everything. "Michael doesn't know, does he? About the intercepted mail, the fake cards, the systematic removal of me from Emma's life. He thinks this was mutual." Michael agreed that some distance would be healthy for everyone involved. "After you convinced him I was the problem." Sarah's laugh was sharp, brittle. "I didn't have to convince him of anything, Kathy. Your own behavior spoke for itself." "What behavior?" "The constant calling, the unwanted visits, the way you undermined our parenting decisions." I stared at her in disbelief. "I called because I wanted to see Emma. I visited because I love her. When did I ever undermine you? Every time you bought her toys we hadn't approved, every time you let her have sugar before dinner, every time you told her stories about the old days that contradicted what we'd taught her. These weren't undermining. They were the normal acts of a grandmother who loved her granddaughter. But through Sarah's lens, every gesture of affection became an act of rebellion." "You wanted me gone from the beginning," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "I wanted what was best for my family." "Your family? Emma is my granddaughter. Emma is my daughter." Sarah's voice turned ice cold. "And I decide who gets to be part of her life." The words hung between us like a thrown gauntlet. This wasn't about protection or Emma's well-being. This was about control. "Where are they?" I asked quietly. "Where are what?" "The real things. The cards I actually sent, the presents I brought, the letters I wrote. You didn't throw them away, you're too smart for that. You kept them as insurance, didn't you? Sarah's face went pale. Bingo. I don't know what you're talking about. But I could see it in her eyes. She'd kept everything, probably as proof of my obsessive behavior, if she ever needed to justify her actions to Michael or anyone else. They're in the basement, aren't they? I was already moving toward the stairs before she could stop me. The basement had always been Michael's domain. His workshop, his storage area. Sarah rarely went down there. Kathy, stop. But I was already on the stairs, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and vindication. If Sarah had kept the evidence of her deception, I was going to find it. The basement smelled of sawdust and old paper. Boxes lined the walls, neatly labeled in Sarah's precise handwriting. Christmas decorations. Michael's college papers. Emma's baby clothes. And then I saw it, tucked behind the water heater where Michael would never think to look. A plain cardboard box with no label. Inside were years of my life with Emma. Birthday cards I'd carefully selected and signed. Christmas presents I'd wrapped with love. Photographs I'd printed and sent. Letters I'd written when calls went unanswered, explaining how much I missed her. How sorry I was for whatever I'd done wrong. At the bottom of the box was a manila folder filled with copies of emails. My emails to Michael, asking about Emma's school schedule so I could attend her play. Sarah's responses, sent from Michael's account, saying Emma was sick and the play was cancelled. My follow-up emails asking about rescheduled dates. More responses claiming there was no makeup performance. I found receipts for returned packages. Presents I'd sent that were marked "Return to Sender" and sent back to me. Except I'd never received them. Sarah had been intercepting them at the post office, using some kind of mail forwarding system. Kathy. Sarah's voice came from behind me on the stairs. You need to stop this. I turned around, holding the folder of emails. This is Michael's email account. You've been responding to me, pretending to be him. Michael doesn't have time to manage every little communication. Every little communication. These are about his daughter. These are about your need for attention and your refusal to respect boundaries. I climbed the stairs slowly, the evidence clutched in my hands. Michael is going to see all of this. No, Sarah said quietly. He's not. You can't stop me from telling him the truth. Sarah's expression shifted again, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Not fear of being caught, but fear of losing control. If you show him those emails, if you tell him about any of this, I will make sure you never see Emma again. Ever. Sarah's threat should have terrified me. A week ago it would have. But standing there with years of evidence in my hands, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Power. You're going to threaten me now? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm going to protect my family, Sarah replied, but her composure was cracking. You're an unstable old woman who's obsessed with my daughter. Your daughter. I held up one of the birthday cards I'd found. This is addressed to Emma Hartwell, my granddaughter. Your daughter shares my son's last name, which makes her my family too. Blood doesn't make family, Kathy. Love does. And Emma doesn't love you because she doesn't know you. The words were meant to wound, and they did. But they also revealed something important. Sarah was scared. Scared enough to be cruel. Scared enough to show her true colors. She doesn't know me because you made sure she wouldn't, I said. But that can change. How? You think Michael is going to believe you over me? You think he's going to choose his difficult, demanding mother over his wife and child? The sad thing was, she was probably right. Michael had already chosen silence over defending me. But I wasn't doing this for Michael anymore. I'm not asking him to choose, I said quietly. I'm just going to tell him the truth. I started toward the stairs, but Sarah stepped in front of me. If you do this, if you destroy my marriage, Emma will suffer. Is that what you want? To traumatize an 8-year-old child? What I want is for Emma to know she has a grandmother who loves her. She has a grandmother who loves her. My mother has been there for her every day of her life. Your mother lives in Florida. She visits. She calls. She's present in ways you never were. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment I almost believed her. Almost wondered if I really had been the absent, difficult mother-in-law she painted me as. Then I looked at the evidence in my hands. Years of intercepted letters, returned gifts, fabricated responses. This wasn't about my failings. This was about Sarah's need for control. I'm going to wait for Michael to come home, I said. He won't be home until after 6. Emma will be here by then. Of course, Sarah was always thinking 3 steps ahead. She knew that if I confronted Michael in front of Emma, I'd either have to explain why her grandmother had been absent from her life, or I'd have to stay silent to protect her. Then I'll wait. You can't stay here. This is my house. This is Michael's house too. And until he tells me to leave, I'm staying. We stood there in a silent standoff. Sarah's perfect facade had completely crumbled now, revealing the calculating woman underneath. Her hands were shaking slightly, and I realized she was more afraid than she was letting on. You have no idea what you're doing, she said finally. I'm doing what I should have done years ago. I'm fighting for my granddaughter. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. That's the school. Emma's bus will be here in 20 minutes. 20 minutes to decide how to handle this. 20 minutes before my granddaughter walked into the middle of a family war. Sarah, I said, and my voice was gentler now. This doesn't have to be a battle. Emma can love both of us. She can have 2 grandmothers who care about her. She already does. She has my mother and me. I'm not trying to replace your mother. I just want to be part of Emma's life. You want to confuse her. You want to disrupt the stability we've built. I want to love her. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. Love. You don't even know her. You don't know her favorite color, her best friend's name, what she wants to be when she grows up. She was right, and it hurt more than I wanted to admit. I didn't know these things about Emma because I'd been kept from knowing them. You made sure I wouldn't know, I said. But I can learn. It's too late for that. It's never too late. The sound of the school bus rumbling down the street cut through our conversation. Sarah's panic was visible now. She'd run out of time to control the situation. Promise me you won't upset her, she said desperately. Whatever happens between us, promise me you won't traumatize Emma. I would never hurt Emma. Then don't tell her about any of this. Let me figure out how to handle it. The front door opened and Emma's voice called out, Mom, I'm home. Sarah looked at me pleadingly. Please. I looked at the evidence in my hands, then at Sarah's frightened face. Emma's footsteps were getting closer. Emma, sweetie. Sarah called out, her voice artificially bright. Come to the kitchen. Daddy's friend is still here. Emma appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, her face lighting up when she saw me. Oh hi. Are you staying for dinner again? I looked at this beautiful child, my granddaughter, who still didn't know who I was. Sarah was watching me intently, waiting to see what I would do. Emma, I said softly, I have something to tell you. Emma looked at me with those curious blue eyes, waiting. Sarah held her breath, her face pale with terror. But as I looked at my granddaughter, really looked at her, I realized something important. This wasn't about winning or losing anymore. This was about doing what was right for Emma. Emma, I said gently, kneeling down to her level, I have something very special to show you. Sarah started to protest, but I held up my hand. From the folder, I pulled out a photograph, one of the few originals I'd found in the basement box. It showed me holding a newborn baby, both of us in a hospital room. This is me holding a very special baby, I said, handing Emma the photo. Can you guess who this baby is? Emma studied the picture carefully. Her face scrunched in concentration. It's not me, is it? I wasn't born in a hospital like that. You're very smart, I said, smiling. This is your daddy when he was just 1 day old. Emma's eyes widened. That's Daddy. Yes. And I'm his mommy. Which makes me your grandma. The words hung in the air. Emma looked from the photo to me, then to her mother, confusion evident on her face. But Mommy said. I know what Mommy said, I replied softly. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes when they're trying to protect people they love. Sarah stepped forward, her voice tight. Kathy, I don't think this is appropriate. What's not appropriate is lying to a child about her family. Emma was still staring at the photograph. If you're Daddy's mommy, why haven't I seen you before? It was the question I'd been dreading, but also the one that mattered most. Sometimes families have disagreements, sweetheart. Your mommy and I couldn't agree on some things, and I stayed away because I thought it was better for everyone. But it wasn't better, Emma said with startling clarity. Because I didn't know I had another grandma. Out of the mouths of babes. This 8-year-old had grasped something that had taken me years to understand. That protecting her from family complexity had actually robbed her of family love. You're right, I said. It wasn't better. Emma looked at Sarah. Mom, why didn't you tell me about Grandma Kathy? Sarah's composure finally cracked completely. Tears started rolling down her cheeks as she struggled to find words that would make sense to a child. I thought it would be easier if you pretended I didn't exist, I finished gently. Your mom was trying to protect you from getting hurt if I disappointed you. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was a truth Emma could understand. Sarah looked at me with surprise, clearly expecting me to expose all of her deceptions. But you're here now, Emma said matter-of-factly. So you won't disappear again, right? I hope not, sweetheart. If it's okay with your parents, I'd love to spend more time with you. Emma's face lit up. Can we do grandma things? Like baking cookies and reading stories? I would love that more than anything. The front door opened and Michael's voice called out, I'm home. Emma ran toward the front hall, clutching the photograph. Daddy, MC. I have another grandma. Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face cycling through confusion, shock, and finally resignation as he saw the photograph in Emma's hands and the evidence scattered on the counter. Mom, he said quietly. What's going on? Daddy, look. Emma thrust the photo at him. This is you when you were a baby, and this is Grandma Kathy. She's been missing, but now she's back. Michael's eyes met mine over Emma's head. In them I saw shame, guilt, and something else, relief. As if a weight he'd been carrying for years was finally being lifted. Yeah, kiddo, he said, his voice rough with emotion. That's Grandma Kathy. She's been away for a while. But she's not going away again, right, Daddy? Michael looked at Sarah, then back at me. That's up to Grandma Kathy and Mommy to figure out. Actually, I said, it's up to all of us. Family decisions should involve the whole family. Over the next hour, while Emma played in the living room, the three of us had the hardest conversation of our lives. I showed Michael the evidence of Sarah's deception. The intercepted mail, the fake responses, the systematic erasure of me from Emma's photo albums. He was quiet for a long time, processing the magnitude of what his wife had done. I knew something was wrong, he admitted finally. I knew you wouldn't just stop caring about Emma. But Sarah said you were overwhelmed, that you needed space. I needed space to be manipulated, Sarah said bitterly, but there was defeat in her voice now. No, I said. You needed control. But Emma doesn't belong to any of us. She belongs to herself, and she deserves to know all the people who love her. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It wasn't even reconciliation. But it was truth finally spoken aloud. 3 months later, I was in Michael's kitchen teaching Emma how to make my grandmother's apple pie recipe. She wore a too-big apron and had flour in her hair, chattering about school while she helped me roll out the dough. Grandma Kathy, she said, next week is Grandparents' Day at school. Will you come? I would be honored, I said, meaning every word. Sarah had moved out 6 weeks ago. The marriage might not survive this, But Emma was adjusting better than anyone expected. She spent alternating weekends with her mother and had regular video calls with Grandma Helen in Florida. And every Tuesday and Thursday after school, she came to my apartment where we baked, read stories, and slowly built the relationship that had been stolen from us. I wasn't trying to replace anyone or prove anything anymore. I was simply being what I'd always wanted to be. Emma's grandmother, present and loving and real. Some battles aren't won through confrontation. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply reclaiming your place in the world, one quiet moment at a time.